Before we get any further, today's video contains spoilers for episodes 6 and 7 of The Bad Batch Season 3. If you haven't had the chance to watch them yet, we highly recommend heading on over to Disney Plus and doing so before starting the video. But if you're all caught up, or just don't care, let's dive right in.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Welcome back to another week of The Bad Batch, and things are heating up just the way we like it. We're pretty sure everyone will agree that the best part of The Bad Batch is the clones, and in this episode, we got to see the Clone Underground in action. Seeing so many liberated clones working together under Rex really hit us in the feels, and watching them nearly get wiped out was almost as bad as the last few episodes of the Clone Wars. This episode pair gave us a lot, and keeping to what this season has been doing so well, it was all show, no tell. From Senator Chuchi and Singh conspiring toward what we can assume is the beginnings of the Rebel Alliance, to the Clone Underground facilitating them and capturing an operative, to them continuing to look for Tantus, the elements that will one day form the Alliance to restore the Republic are well underway. But the Empire isn't sitting idly by. Once again, we got to see the strange Shadow Operatives Season 2 brought us. Both Shadow clones we saw in this week's episodes were definitely formidable, and the info we get from them is twisted and concerning, but longtime fans probably aren't too surprised to hear about them. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the Republic's long history of Shadow Operatives and how they're not as new as Crosshair seems to think they are. The Shadow Operatives' history actually began during the Clone Wars with the Shadow Trooper Project, the brainchild of a man named Armand Issard. Issard was a male human that began his service to the Galactic Republic as both the director of the Senate Bureau of Intelligence and the director of Republic Intelligence. After the Galactic Empire rose to power, he transitioned to be the director of Imperial Intelligence. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. During the Separatist crisis, Issard was unconventional in his approach to problems, as one would expect of a man who'd gladly go from serving the Republic to serving the Empire. He found innovative but morally questionable solutions to problems such as shutting down the Sluice sector holonet and depriving billions of people access to communication in the name of limiting anti-Republic propaganda. His efforts didn't diminish when the Clone Wars broke out. At this time, he was one of Palpatine's most trusted advisors and held a seat on the Security and Intelligence Council. He formed the Crypto-Analysis Department, which also focused on limiting any anti-Republic sentiments on the holonet. But what we're here to talk about today is his Shadow Trooper project, a new type of clone commando his intelligence bureaus could deploy during the war on secret missions. These Shadow Troopers were trained to replace the dwindling numbers of ARC Troopers and trained to be equally as elite. They were equipped with greatly modified armor that allowed them to operate in stealth, infiltrating behind enemy lines and gathering intel. What made their armor unique was the strategically placed mag seals that allowed them to alter their appearance, disguising themselves as different people. By the later stages of the war, however, they weren't just doing recon. Some Shadow Troopers took on additional tasks, such as sniper duty, while others served on the field. They weren't compatible working side by side with Regs due to their jamming systems, but they were frequently sent out ahead of battles to install comm jamming devices in cities, allowing other Shadow Troopers to sneak in. This is what they did in 19 BBY, for example, when they snuck into Utapau City before General Kenobi and the 7th Sky Corps descended on it, finally taking the planet for the Republic and killing General Grievous. After the Clone Wars ended, the Shadow Troopers were kept on as guards for places or people. Palpatine stationed a unit outside a secret storehouse on Utapau. Unlike the new Stormtroopers, who got kitted out in new armor, the Shadow Troopers kept their original black armor, which earned them the nickname of the Emperor's Black Bones. Later on, during the time of the Empire, the Shadow Troopers inspired the clone Shadow Troopers, which were pretty much the same thing, but packaged differently. So, how are they connected to Hemlock's new toys? To be completely transparent with you, there's still no evidence to confirm Hemlock's secret agents are directly linked to Issard's Shadow Troopers. However, there are so many elements they have in common, we'd be shocked if they weren't. Like the Shadow Troopers, Hemlock's secret agents are clones that have been repurposed for the purposes of infiltration espionage, and assassination. From what we saw of the 3 Shadow clones, they're experts in sneaking into a location without being detected and gathering information. Not only that, but 2 of them were also competent snipers, as we know the Shadow Troopers were later used as. Another core similarity is the black armor both types of secret operatives have used, and the fact that they work alone. As the Shadow Troopers did before, Hemlock's agents don't work well with regs and have, in fact, been shown to go directly against orders to do their own thing. This is, of course, a characteristic of highly trained and elite soldiers like the Shadow Troopers and ARCs before them. From what we learned in this week's episodes, these secret agents not only undergo strict training, but they also suffer through intensive brainwashing. In a way, this isn't surprising. From what we've seen of Hemlock so far, his strategies seem to focus on taking something the Republic or Empire had and improving it, whether it's cloning or secret recon operatives. As Crosshair reports, the clones chosen to become Shadow operatives are broken down with pain and chemicals until their previous identity is wiped from their minds. Then, when they're nothing more than a husk of what they used to be, they're transformed into the most loyal operatives the Empire likely has. Looking at the Shadow Troopers' success rates, but also at the clones' recent track record of defying the Empire, and knowing how Hemlock feels about free will, it's no real surprise he chose to escalate the recruitment process to ensure the best results in the field. Which brings us to our final point for the day, and something we'd really been hoping to avoid: the return of Tech. We're going to be honest with you, as much as we like Tech, we wanted him to stay dead. All too often, shows like The Bad Batch give us fake outs and miraculously bring characters back so they can show character growth without any real consequences. Tech staying dead would have been a fantastic element, but after this week's episodes, we'd bet our editor's firstborn that Tech is not only alive, but the Shadow operative harassing Clone Force 99. Let's look at the evidence. First off, his equipment, build, and gait. The Shadow operative relied on a single-eyed visor that he would bring down over his right eye to scan things, much like the one Tech had. His helmet also features that small antenna over his right temple, again like the one Tech had. Also, Tech was built slightly different from most clones. He was leaner and lankier, which is definitely true for this Shadow operative. He was also fairly nimble, and the way the Shadow operatives moves across terrain is definitely not how most regs walk or move. But moving past the physical similarities and parallels, it's such an obvious storytelling trope. We've all suspected for a while that Tech didn't really die and would come back to haunt the Bad Batch, and this is exactly what that would look like. Their old friend, captured and brainwashed into forgetting them, then sicked on them. For episodes, they struggle against one another, only for them to finally discover their enemy's true identity, thus causing emotional turmoil, followed by a desire to save him. Eventually, Tech remembers who they are and becomes their friend once more, helping them take down the bad guy. That's why the show creators have made sure to use a voice modifier to disguise his voice. That's why we don't see his face, even in the scene where he's drowning Crosshair. We're not supposed to know it's Tech until the timing is perfect to cause the most pain possible. And naturally, that's why this seemingly unimportant NPC got so much independent screen time, and why the writers went out of their way to show us he survived at the end. In our minds, that's Tech 100%, and we're still not sure how to feel about that. But what do you think? Do you agree with us that that Shadow clone is Tech, or do you think they're going to surprise us with something else? Also, the rabbit hole of Shadow Troopers goes a lot deeper than we've described today. We just couldn't fit it in the time constraints. So let us know in the comment section below if you want a dedicated video about the Clone Wars era Shadow Troopers. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you next week when the next Bad Batch episode drops.